Over the past couple weeks, FNAF fans have been theorizing about what the future holds for the second FNAF movie that Scott and Blumhouse are working on. Some things have been confirmed, like the general theme of the movie being centered around FNAF 2, or that everyone's favorite marionette will be making an appearance due to the music box playing in the credits of the first movie. However, that's about all we have confirmed at the moment. The only other news we've gotten is that the script for the second movie is being reworked due to criticism about the first movie. While fans are eagerly awaiting for some more info, the community has been theorizing away about what could happen in the next movie. And at the moment, there has been one theory that shines above the rest, one that could easily be true and give us some insight into the future. And that theory is that Garret, Mike Schmidt's brother, who was killed by William Afton, is actually the puppet. Now, obviously, this is a massive theory, because we know that the puppet is most likely going to be the main driving point of the sequel due to the music box playing in the credits, and also because the puppet is one of, if not the most memorable character from FNAF 2. But hold on a minute, if you remember how the story in the games went, then Charlie, Henry's daughter, is the one that possesses the puppet in the games, not Mike's brother, so that would mean that Garret can't be the puppet, right? Well, buckle up folks, because I'm about to present all the available evidence that we have that could prove that Garret is the puppet once and for all. To start off, let's state the indisputable facts that we know of currently. The first one, as previously stated, is that the second movie will somehow incorporate the ideas of FNAF 2. The director of the FNAF movie basically confirmed this when she stated, and I quote, "This one was tied into the first game, and we would probably focus on tying the second one into the second game, and so on and so forth. But anything could happen, we'll have to see." So, there you have it. More likely than not, the second movie will somehow revolve around FNAF 2. That's the first fact. The second fact, as previously stated again, is that the puppet will make an appearance in the next movie due to the music box playing in the credits. As the fan base is well aware of by now, Scott almost never implements something important like this without having it having some meaning behind it, even if it doesn't have a purpose at that moment. The puppet may not have appeared in the first movie, but Scott made us well aware that it will show up eventually. That's the second fact. The third fact is that somebody, most likely Mike and company, will be searching for the source of the "Come Find Me" voice that we hear at the end of the credits. I am going to claim in this theory that I know who is saying the "Come Find Me", but right now, we need to discuss some other stuff. I will definitely discuss this more in a moment, I promise, but we need to move on to what I believe is the most important fact. And it's that, and I need y'all to listen very carefully here, it's that the movie is not and will not be one-to-one with the game and books. Yes, the main idea of the movie comes from the game and books, and some of the scenes comes from the games and books, but what we need to keep in mind is that Scott has stated that he wants the movie to stand on its own and not completely rely on the franchise's lore. He wants to create a good movie with its own story because he explicitly states this in Daco's interview with him.
Something I've really started to come to want over these last few years is I want that movie to be able to stand on its own as a good movie and not ride the coattails of a different part of the franchise.
So, when some of these points are being made, keep in mind that not everything will follow the lore that we all know and love to a T. Some things will follow the lore, some things won't, and some things will actually be a hybrid of old and new ideas. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the major points for how Garret could potentially be the puppet in the next movie. The first major indicator of Garret being the puppet is that he's most likely William Afton's first kill, and Garret is actually representing Charlie in this universe. This is a big assumption, so let's go ahead and take a look at the evidence for this. Our first big clue is that the way that Garret is taken eerily resembles the way Charlie was taken. Think about it for a moment. In the FNAF 2 minigame, Take Cake to the Children, we see Freddy going around giving cake to children, while one lone child, Charlie, stands outside alone, away from the group. Then, William Afton pulls up in his car, murders Charlie, and leaves her body to rot. Then, the puppet jump scare plays, ending the minigame. Now, let's take a look at what happened in the movie, shall we? Garret wanders off, away from his family, away from his group, and that is when William Afton decides to strike. He grabs Garret and puts him in his car and speeds away. Now, obviously, there are some differences here, with the main one being that William didn't murder Garret right then and there. He kidnapped him and then later on killed him. However, there is one parallel that is consistent between the two, and it's our key to prove that Garret is William Afton's first kill. It's also major point 1.5, and that is William Afton's signature. Some of you might already know what I'm referring to, but for those who don't, it's quite simple to understand. A signature is something that a serial killer does to distinguish his murders from everyone else's. That's one of the things that separates a murderer from a serial killer. For example, a real-life serial killer, who I will not name because I don't want this video to get age restricted, used to keep skulls and bones of some of his victims as trophies, which he stored in a barrel and the filing cabinet in his apartment. That was one of his signatures. Now you might be asking yourself, okay, so then what is William Afton's signature? Well, my friends, that would be the Spring Bonnie costume. William Afton would lure his victims using the Spring Bonnie costume and eviscerate them while they were all alone. Here's the thing though, in both Charlie and Garret's case, the Spring Bonnie suit wasn't utilized, and that's because he hadn't developed his signature yet. It came at a later date, when the 5 missing children's incident took place. Okay, cool, but it doesn't necessarily prove that Garret became the puppet after his demise. It just proves that he has a good chance of representing Charlie's death of being the first murdered. This brings us to point number 2, which is the music box and the Come Find Me Easter eggs at the end of the movie. At the bare minimum, the music box proves that the puppet will appear and that whoever is in the puppet is asking somebody to come find them. After this point is where we have to start speculating. Let's start with the hidden message. The person saying this can either be one of 2 people. The most likely one is Garret because it makes the most sense. However, we then have the runner-up, which is Charlie. Let's go ahead and disprove that it is Charlie with some good old common sense. To start, implementing Charlie would almost overcomplicate things at this point because Garret has already taken elements from Charlie, and if Charlie exists, then she would need a different backstory. I mean, the lore itself, I know, is literally a hot mess, but if we look at the lore of the movie versus the lore of the games, it's pretty easy to tell that Scott wanted to make things simpler in the movie form. In fact, and this is just an opinion, but I would personally go as far to say that almost all of the main characters for the movies have already been introduced. Except for the animatronics, obviously. We have no evidence of Henry or Charlie even existing in this universe at all. The only thing I've seen some people argue that has a chance of being true is that the technician we see in the introduction tape that Mike watches is actually Henry. But that is a real shot in the dark there. And don't even get me started on Mike's dad being Henry. He's not. Yes, that gives William a motive for kidnapping Garret, but then how do you explain Mike not knowing about Freddy's at all? Or the 5 missing kids incident that led to Freddy's shutdown? Or that the technician is a different guy than Mike's dad? I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but the bottom line is that at this moment in time, we have virtually 0 evidence of Charlie's and Henry's existence. If I'm proven wrong by someone, I will pin a comment apologizing and addressing where I went wrong. Anyway, at the moment, we can rule out Charlie. Now, I will address that some of you think it's actually William Afton calling out to Vanessa. However, my rebuttal to that is, you're right, and wrong. This is an entirely separate theory on its own because of how big it would be if it's true, and it would need its own video for me to properly do it justice. So, the best thing for me to do now is to say that it's technically possible for it to be both William and Garret, just in 2 different ways. Anyway, let's get back on track. Where were we? Right. The Come Find Me Easter egg and who is saying it. So, after disproving it's Charlie, that leaves us with only one person, Garret. A call out from Garret to Mike saying that he's still out there somewhere, hidden away, waiting for Mike to find him. Okay, now I hear you saying, but that still doesn't prove that Garret is the puppet. To which I respond, fine. I'll give you one last major point, and that point is motive. For the second movie to happen, there has to be a motive for Mike Schmidt. Otherwise, the second movie doesn't work. At least if centered around Mike, which I think we can all agree it will be because, you know, Scott doesn't want to overcomplicate things. Anyway, we know that Mike does not want to return to Freddy's ever again, and that's based on his reaction to Abby when she asked him this.
Can we visit them sometime?
Yeah, there is no way that he wants to go back there, or to any location. That is, unless he has a real good reason, and what better excuse to go back to Freddy's Pizza Place than the knowledge that his brother is still out there. Pretty much no other motive could exist, because Vanessa is in a coma, and she's probably going to have her own demons to battle with, because, you know, dreams and all that. And let's face it, it's not going to be the knowledge of William still being out there, because that's going to be the third movie. And besides, his body needs some time to decompose and turn the suit into Springtrap. So, that leaves us with one motive, that Garret is calling out to him in his dreams to come find him in a different Freddy's location. And that, my friends, is where our evidence list ends. Now, before I address some of the flaws, let's summarize our theory really quickly. The theory is that Garret is the puppet. Our evidence is that Garret is William's first kill. The music box indicates that the puppet will have the big part in the sequel. Mike will be searching for his brother who is in the puppet suit. And finally, Garret is a version of Charlie in this universe. There it is. Our evidence wrapped up in a neat little bow. Now it's time to crush it into a pulp. First flaw, literally everything is circumstantial. Not a single piece of evidence is directly stated in the movie. Everything is assumed, though with common sense and a little background knowledge of the games. Secondly, although William's signature is killing with the Spring Bonnie suit and stuffing the children, there's no actual way to know if Garret was stuffed into the puppet. After all, the existence of the puppet in the games is solely because William's child and or children were slain, and the security puppet was created afterwards to help the kids, which obviously didn't work because, Charlie. Anyway, the puppet does exist in the movie universe, but for what reason is unknown. Realistically, there's two solutions. One, Vanessa did have a sibling, like the crying child or Elizabeth, and they were killed, which led to the creation of the puppet. Or two, Scott is creating a new backstory for the puppet. I think it's the latter because it connects us with flaw 3. Well, I mean, it's not really a flaw, but more of something to just keep in mind. And it is that the FNAF 2 location exists somewhere with the puppet. I'm not even going to try to discuss the whole situation regarding whether or not it already exists or will exist, because it would need its own video as well. So right now, this is something to just keep in mind. One last major flaw is that Garret could also be possessing the Golden Freddy suit along with the blonde boy instead of the puppet. I don't actually have anything to really disprove this other than the question of if he is in there, why didn't he reveal himself to Abby? Is blonde boy mainly in control? This is an open-ended flaw and one that I don't have an answer to. So right now, I didn't know. There are obviously some other flaws, but these are the major ones that I can think of. And so, with all of the evidence and flaws in mind, it's time to answer our burning question. With the evidence that we have right now, is Garret the puppet? And I can confidently say that Garret, drumroll please, is incredibly likely to be the puppet. It's not 100% like most of you would have liked, but like with pretty much everything Scott does, nothing is 100%. At the end of the day, at least you can leave with this. The puppet is either Charlie or Garret, so there's at least, at bare minimum, a 50% chance of this being right. And I think that we can reasonably assume that Garret is going to be our little marionette for the next film. But hey, that's just a theory. It has come to my attention that due to legal reasons, I cannot finish that statement. Anyway, thank y'all for watching. Keep in mind that this is just a theory, and I know I got some things wrong. That's just going to happen with any theory that anyone makes, so please don't take this and think it's actually going to happen. It's possible, but definitely not exactly how I've described it. Maybe. Who knows? If you enjoyed this video and want to watch another, I did a different theory video about how FNAF 4 could possibly be in the next movie due to Vanessa being in a coma. If you want to see me make some more theories, then let me know in the comments below. I love you all, and I hope you have a great day. Stay safe, and I'll catch you on the flip side.